Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Music Spectrum Podcast. I am your host, Ron Glista, and tonight, doing something a little different here. I got a guest on my show that I know very little about besides just talking with him for about 5 minutes before we jumped on. And he was told by my brother-in-law, Tug of all people, that he needs to get on my show. So I'm going to introduce Joe Bada. Welcome to the show, man. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How you doing? And it's actually Beta, but leave that. I love it because I get called Joe Bada all the time, so it's an easy way to
Joe
for a
Bada Boom Bada Bing. I'm
conversational.
sure you've heard that
That's
too, right?
absolutely a lot of other things too. But yeah, my name is Joe Beta. I work at Boardman Subaru with your brother-in-law Tug, and he kind of turned me on to you a little bit after listening to his podcast, which I was really entertained by. I thought it was pretty amazing. So. Um, I was pretty honored that he thought enough of me to want to talk to you about music. So my music's one of my passions. But anyway, I'm born and raised in Youngstown, Ohio. Moved around quite a bit. I won't bore anybody with the stories. Moved around every 2-3 years growing up and went to several schools. So I grew up on the south side of Youngstown until second grade, west side of Youngstown until fourth grade. Parents get divorced, moved to Struthers. I'm always meeting new friends, new people, new environments. And then my middle school years, 6th through 8th grade, I went to Boardman Glenwood Middle School. And then mom gets remarried. We moved to Poland. So of all places I end up, I graduated from Poland in 1995. So along the way, I've met a lot of people, a lot of friends, a lot of influences, things like that. So did a lot of things growing up, a lot of interests, but just a quick synopsis of the things that I'm interested in. I was always been into motorcycles. Boxing is my favorite sport. I played baseball a little bit through school, little league up until my sophomore year in high school. Then I was more interested in cars and having fun and partying with my friends, in school. So I wasn't much of a student. Listening to music, man, my 80s hair metal, which I never quite got away from. And that was huge for me in high school. AC/DC being my favorite band. And that was a huge influence for me. Up until now, I just never really grew up out of that stage. But one of the sports I did in high school actually was in the KO Drugs boxing. We were the second class out of Poland High School to actually have students that wanted to box, and I made it to the finals, lost the finals, but I got into boxing shortly after high school too. Yeah, so I boxed at Southside Boxing Club for a while, mostly sparring training and wanted to be a professional boxer of all things. At one point in time, I wanted to be a pro boxer. Never quite got there, but took the work and dedication,
Oh yeah.
But
Okay,
then
cool.
I went to school, went to college for a year, went to YSU for business. I had absolutely no clue what I wanted to do out of high school. As a matter of fact, I joined the Marines my junior year, went to the delayed entry program, and then ended up not going for a few reasons. They changed my MO to a 5.5 year versus a 4 year. I signed up for military or aircraft maintenance. So they changed my occupation years of sign up. So I got out of that. So I was all over the place. I wanted to join the boxing program in the Marines and just didn't do it, didn't follow up with those things. But one of my passions was always photography as well, specifically sports photography. So ended up going to Pittsburgh Art Institute in Pittsburgh, moved down there in 2000, August of 2000, and graduated December 2002 with a associate's degree in photography. And during my last year there, I actually did professional boxing photography for ESPN, Boxing World Magazine, did a couple of things. And I had my own column for InsideBoxing.com called From a Neutral Corner. And I did quite a few fights in PA, West Virginia, Ohio. Did a lot of Paul Spadafora fights, top ranked boxing, met a lot of the boxing stars, Buster Douglas, all those guys. So the list goes on and on. I can talk for 2 hours about some of the things I've experienced, but done some crazy things, some fun things. Then moved back after I graduated, did boxing photography until 2005. I actually photographed Mike Tyson's last fight at the
Oh wow.
in Youngstown, the Tyson World Tour. I was ringside for that, and that was my last gig because
Oh wow.
it didn't pay the bills. It did pay the bills, but got into the car business in 2005. Lost my job in Solon, Ohio, as a general manager of a portrait studio. A couple of things happened there, and I got let go of my duties because I had my resume online. I guess I wasn't allowed to do that, and I was jobless, living in an apartment with my girlfriend at the time, who I met in 2003. And one of my good friends from the west side of Youngstown, Donnie Namath, who's our general manager here, by the way, was working at Sweeney Chevrolet and Sweeney Buick. I walked over there one day, told him I needed a job, and I got into the car business in 2005. So I worked over at Sweeney's as a sales rep till 2009. Couldn't take it anymore. After 4 years of the car business, it drove me crazy. Got out for a year and went to go work for a friend as a district manager for Auntie Anne's Pretzels, of all things.
Oh,
Did
wow.
that for a year. Wanted to get back in the car business. I followed my friend Donnie Namath over to Boardman Subaru, August of 2010. Been here ever since. Best job I ever had. So I'm in sales, and I'm one of the used car managers over at the dealership.
That sounds awesome. You know, it's,
Yeah.
you know, you were in the car business for a while, you got sick of it, you got tired of it, had to get out, and it just drags you right back in.
Drags you right back in. And then, of course, shame on me for not talking about my family. So I am happily married since 2006 to my wife, Holly. We live in Austintown. We have three beautiful dogs. Those are my children, unfortunately, but we never had kids. But I have 7 nephews and nieces, a goddaughter, and a godson. So we have plenty of children in our lives. So we have an amazing life, you know. Got kids in my life.
That's what it's all about. Just, you know, try to live an amazing life and be as happy as you can be, right?
Absolutely.
So when you were letting everybody know a little bit about you, you popped a little bit of musical influences in there. And one of the things I heard was AC/DC. Tell me what turned you on to AC/DC? Where did that come from, you know, in your point in life?
Well, obviously everybody knows AC/DC, and they look at it as simple music, and I just think everybody knows of AC/DC. Love them or hate them, you got to agree that they put their mark in the music industry. So if you put on at the time CD 106, which is CD 93.3, you're going to hear AC/DC music, right? So it's all over MTV back in the 80s. But how I got turned on to AC/DC, truly turned on, was in the mid 80s. I had a record player in my room, so I always listened to music. And actually, I started off listening to oldies. My dad was a huge oldies fan, which weren't oldies to him. My dad always played Righteous Brothers and the Four Seasons, Del Shannon. I never really was heavy into rock music at that time. I'm 7, 8 years old. My mom had a bunch of albums and says, "Here, Joey," she goes, "I want you to look through some of my albums I never listened to anymore." And one album intrigued me because it didn't have any artwork on the cover. And it was just a black album. I picked it up. I saw the logo and I'm like, I saw that before. Where did I see that? It said AC/DC. On the bottom, it said Back in Black. I'm like, what is this? I put it on. I had a pretty nice little stereo setup my dad gave me at the time. And the very first track, I'll never forget it, was Hell's Bells. I heard these like church bells ringing. And I'm like, okay, what is this? Is this like satanic music? Am I supposed to listen to this? Here, my mom bought that album when it came out. And I'm listening to that song, and I mean, my heart stopped. I was like, I don't even know what to think right now. I heard the first 2 chords, the drum beat, and then obviously we know now Brian Johnson's voice singing like a rolling thunder. And I was like, this is the perfect music for me. I absolutely loved it. It made my body just tremble with joy. You know, I at a young age, I was just like, this is absolutely amazing. I listened to that whole album through 4 times that day. Never forget it. I couldn't get enough of it. Shook Me All Night Long, Back in Black. I mean, the list goes on. And that album for me, that was really, truly one of the first albums that I listened to front to back on the very first listen. And I literally loved every song. It was just different to me. It was simple. It was rhythmic. It was thunderous. I mean, the guitars played the way it's supposed to be played. The drums are played the way it's supposed to be, you know, how they're supposed to be played. Absolutely amazing. I was hooked immediately. And of course, I'm a huge music fan. So my very first album wasn't Back in Black. It was Thriller from Michael Jackson. Who doesn't like Thriller? I had Thriller. I had some Duran Duran albums. My sister, I have a half sister as well that lives in New York. You know, she would come over every other weekend, and she'd try to get me onto like the 80s synth pop, you know, which I like, you know, Prince, the Rhythmics, a little bit of everything, Information Society. And she even tried to turn me on to Pink Floyd a little bit. It was a little too spacey for me, you know. It was a little too complicated music for me at the time, you know.
I would
So,
agree. I'm not a big Floyd fan myself, and I agree with you. It's just a little bit different for me, and that's something that I've never gotten. I know their songs by listening to CD 106 or 93.3, what it is right now, you know, because that's all they played, like you said, AC/DC, Pink Floyd, Aerosmith,
right.
different things like that. You know, and hearing the songs, you know, the popular stuff, but once you get into some of their deep tracks, that's a little too deep for me too.
Yeah, absolutely. So then to go from there, I just went down the rabbit hole at that point. That was really the very first hard rock album I was into. But I listened to the radio all the time, and I knew all the quote unquote hair bands, glam metal bands at the time. I was familiar with Quiet Riot, Rat. I had cassettes as well, and a lot of those cassettes were hand-me-downs for my sister at the time because I was like too young. My parents didn't want me to listen to that kind of music, you know, initially. I don't even think my mom knew what she bought when she bought Back in Black. You know, I don't even know if she ever listened to it. But I was really like impressed that my mom had that album, to be honest with you, because she listened to mainly disco, the Bee Gees, you know, things like that. And like Fleetwood Mac was a big favorite of hers, Bruce Springsteen. So, I mean, really, I can talk for hours and hours about my musical influences. But to start off before that, the very first music I really got into and listened to was polka music. And I know that sounds really ridiculous, but
No, it doesn't. No,
my
no.
grandfather was a huge polka fan, you know.
Well,
Every Sunday morning on AM radio, I would listen to polka music, and my grandpa would cook halushki, and that was like my first like entrance into music, you know. And I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. It's jumpy, it's fun. Music has always been like the music that moves me is music that just that effortlessly moves my body and fills my mood. So I listen to music that I pick songs, I pick bands that portray that energy that I kind of portray. And I'm a pretty energetic, fun loving guy. I
yeah,
like energetic, fun music. You know, I want to be upbeat most of the time.
yeah.
And, you know, then my dad would always play Freddie Boom Boom Cannon, Palisades Park. I don't know if you ever heard that song. It's a pretty crazy 50s song.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I listened to Chuck Berry, you know, the Beach Boys, which were the 60s, the Righteous Brothers, greatest hits. My dad would always play Righteous Brothers 8 tracks. And Del Shannon, the one album other than all of my 80s hair metal and rock that I listened to, one of the greatest recorded albums is probably Del Shannon Live in England. And that was 1972. That was one of the very first albums I listened to with my father, and just blows me away to this day. I still have it. I'm one of the few that have it on CD because you can't download it anywhere. And I show your brother-in-law that album from time to time, some clips of it, and he's pretty impressed, you know.
You
But
were about to shock me there because I thought you were going to say I still have that on a record, not a CD. So,
well, I collect vinyls now, so I have 2 copies of that on vinyl, of course.
oh no way.
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
Okay.
it's a great album. I don't know why I have 2 copies, but I'm kind of a hoarder. So one had scratches on it and had to buy another copy as a backup on eBay. So
There you go. So you said that Black album, you know, your mom told you to play it, she introduced you to it, whatever. I couldn't think. I mean, there's very, very few bands, or more importantly, songs out there that, like you said, you can hear the first 20 to 30 seconds of it, and you hear the chiming of the bells, and you hear the guitar and the drum kick in. That is such an iconic beginning to a song, let alone any song in the world, but to that song, it's hard to forget that. And
it is.
for to take you right back to that point where you were in your life and how you described listening to the beginning of that song. I mean, I could still hear it in my head right now. It's not even playing. And that's just, it's so cool how you describe that. Cause there's very few songs where you can put it on for 30 seconds and not even listen to the rest of the song and just be blown away by what you just heard.
Yeah, and that was one of them. So that set me off. I will never forget. It was 1985. It was the first year we moved to the West Side. After that point, I wanted to start collecting music. That was it for me. That did it. So I went, and my dad would always, on payday. My dad was also in the car business back in the day. So I never forget, on a Friday payday, he'd take me to the store. We'd go to Bargain Port. We would go to Bargain Port, where you had to put your hand in the little hole and grab a cassette or a CD. And, obviously I listened to the radio a lot. So, I listened to Iron Maiden, I listened to Poison, Metallica. Wasn't big into Metallica at that point, but I was intrigued by them because it was as heavy as I wanted to get. And this is right in the middle of the 80s when that music was popular, and I was a fan of it at a young age. Most people that were a fan of that music were in their teens going to concerts. I was too young to go to a concert, but I wanted all I can get, because when I'd hear these bands playing, guitar solos and, memorable tunes. I mean, tunes you can hum back when you're putting your head on the pillow. And it's just like, Poison wasn't as heavy or as dirty as AC/DC. They were just sleazy, right? Like these 80s hair metal bands, just sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I was too young to even understand what that was.
Oh yeah.
I didn't care less about the lyrics. I just liked the music. So the very first hair metal, if you want to get into hair metal, was Poison, Open Up and Say, Poison, Look What the Cat Dragged In. I think I came out in 86. I bought that. I bought Def Leppard, High and Dry, Def Leppard, Pyromania. I just went down this. Before you know it, I had over 100 cassettes in a short period of time. My dad would just, hey, you want this? Yeah, I get it. So before you know it, I had Def Leppard. I had all the AC/DC cassettes at the time. So started memorizing their catalog pretty well. Didn't realize they had a lead singer before Brian Johnson. And, as I got older, I really started studying like a little bit about my favorite band, AC/DC. And they made 6 albums with their previous lead singer, Bon Scott. Yep. Such a different sound, but the sound of the band was still the same, As Angus Young would say, everyone says we made 11 of the same albums. Says they were wrong. We made 12. Every album sounds the same. They've made the same album to an extent. Now they have, I believe, 16.
They make 11, 12 albums. They're still selling though too.
Exactly. And to me, they're different. To everybody else, I'll play it for my wife. I don't want to go see AC/DC. They all sound the same. Or, that just sounds the same. Every song sounds the same. Well, to most people, maybe it does, but to me, every song's a little different. It means something a little different to me.
Yep. Okay. So you got into the hair metal stuff a little bit there. You talked about that a little bit. Somebody else I have down here in your list is Cinderella. So where does Cinderella fit in on your list of hair metal bands like Poison and Motley Crue and stuff like that?
So in 1987, when Appetite for Destruction came out, like I said, I'm still a young kid. My sister was in love with Axl Rose. So of course I got into Guns N' Roses as well. And I was blown away by that album. Obviously, I don't know if you remember the original cover of Appetite for Destruction when they first released it.
Yes,
it was called the rape cover, because there's a girl on the front cover without clothes on. I wasn't allowed to buy that album. And my sister had it. So I listened to it with her. Obviously, I listened to the radio. I was very familiar with all the songs. I was a big MTV fan, so I was very familiar with Guns N' Roses. So when I used to go visit my sister, who lived on Washington Boulevard, with her mom, we have the same dad, different mom. I used to go over there every other weekend, and she's like, listen to this, Joe, you're going to love it. So I look on the wall, and she has a Cinderella poster. And I just saw these dudes that look like chicks, basically, with big fluffy hair.
Yeah.
Ton of Winnet. On the front cover, I got this 4 strange looking dudes on the front cover. I'm like, what is that? She goes, we're going to listen to that next. So after we finished the Appetite for Destruction album, she pulls out Night Songs. She got it on cassette. I was blown away. I was like, this guy sounds like Brian Johnson from AC/DC, but they were a little different. Musically, probably a little more talented in a certain way, maybe not as rich. And that glam metal, that sound You know, his raspy voice, the bluesy guitar, it was very similar to AC/DC, very similar to me. And every song was great. Then I started watching MTV and their videos came out shortly after that. She was a huge Bon Jovi fan, which Bon Jovi got Cinderella's start. She's telling me the story about this because my sister used to have Hit Parader magazine. So I learned a lot of it from her. Then she'd give me the magazines and I'd read them, you know. So at a young age, I knew about this band Cinderella, but they only had one album, right? So I bought that album. I wore it out. I wore out my sister's Appetite for Destruction cassette too. So at this point, I'm just in heaven. I didn't think music can get any better. I mean, it was the perfect music for my life. I don't even know why it's the perfect music for my life. I was a young kid, you know, got all my friends into it, but I was just a huge Cinderella, Guns N' Roses fan. Just not a lot of catalog, right? I had one album to go off of. 1988. As I'm getting a little older, I moved. This is where everything kind of changed. I went in 1988. I moved to Struthers, and that was a tough time for me because my parents got divorced. So my mom had custody of me, and we had this little apartment right behind the Bowery on Midlothian. So all I had was music, man. I didn't have a lot of toys. I had music, and I had all my cassettes, and I'm listening to my music. And my mom takes me music shopping, and that was a big thing for me. I'd go get music, you know. And I saw that Cinderella had a new album out. It's called Long Cold Winter, just a white album. And I remember looking at that album, I'm like, it's very similar to Back in Black. It's just a white cover with purple, you know, logo. And I'm like, man, this looks really cool. I knew nothing about that album. Got the cassette home, and I was even more blown away. It's like that band evolved a little bit. It was a bluesier album, a couple power ballads, which I'm a huge fan of. And so, you know, Cinderella doesn't have a lot of albums. They have four studio albums, but I always loved them. Almost equal to AC/DC. Fast forward to my teen years, and when I started driving and had a stereo in my car, I was stuck in the 80s, man. You know, I mean, I was just absolutely stuck in the 80s in 1993, 94. I was stuck. I'll never forget when Nirvana came out. I was watching the video, the world premiere. The song before that was Warrant Cherry Pie. That was the #1 album that year, Warrant Cherry Pie, 1991. The world premiere on a Friday night comes out, Nirvana. Smells Like Teen Spirit. That changed the music world overnight.
Absolutely, it did.
Though I liked that song, I didn't like what happened afterward because all these bands from Seattle came out, all the grunge bands. I absolutely hated them at the time. I hated them. It took away from more of my 80s hair metal music to come out. You know, my glam metal. It just stopped altogether. It was like overnight the music industry changed from wearing makeup, big hair, and that's not why I like my 80s hair metal bands. I like what they stood for. They just played good music. You know, they played their instruments. It was rhythmic. It drove me. It was exciting. And then you go into this sadness almost overnight, like this angry, sad music. And I wasn't a huge fan of any of those bands at the time, you know. So I still listen to my AC/DC, Cinderella, Guns N' Roses, Rat, Poison, Wasp, Warrant, you know, the list kind of goes on and on. I was probably like a one of a kind because I didn't have many friends that followed suit with me, you know.
Oh yeah. Well, like you said, that one song bringing in that new genre of music completely changed everything because you and I are the same age. We both graduated in 95, and I remember watching Smells Like Teen Spirit on MTV. I remember seeing Even Flow, Pearl Jam playing on MTV. And that was the new thing to listen to. You know, I'm the
Right.
same way. I liked all my old stuff. I was in the 80s hair metal, Guns N' Roses, different things like that. But this was something completely new that just changed music.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, like you said, just dropped what they were doing and just followed that because it just took off.
Yeah, absolutely. So I tried to get into it. So I kind of forced myself, and I got into a little bit of Soundgarden and Pearl Jam. And to be quite honest, fast forwarding now at 43 years old, I actually have most of the grunge band albums. I actually learned to appreciate them for what they were, you know. And the state of music today to me is horrible. I couldn't name you top 40 bands right now. I have no clue. And it's not. I don't have this preconceived notion that new music is bad, but I used to joke and say, man, what happened to the songwriters? Did the songwriters die? Because there's nothing on the radio now that quite gets my juices flowing. It sets the tone for my day. I mean, I listen to music on a bad day, 2 hours a day. On a bad day, on a day I shouldn't be listening to music, I listen to music 2 hours a day. I have a half-hour drive to work, half-hour drive home. I go home. I consider myself kind of an amateur audiophile. I have two really nice stereo setups in my house. Every single room has a sound bar. I mean, everything's kind of set up where I want it to sound as good as it possibly can. And I just, music's everything to me. It winds me down and it wakes me up. So as I grew older, even with Tug, and Tug jokes with me all the time when we go back and forth. He hates hair metal, and we joke about it. Whether he hates it or not, I don't even know, but we joke about it. I know he probably can't stand it. And he's kind of the guy that I got into a couple crazy little things. I won't get off track here because I could talk for 4 hours about music, but I led him on to some bands recently that have been around for a while, but haven't been around. Like the Texas Tornadoes, a little bit of Tex-Mex music. The lead singer of the Sir Douglas Quintet had a super group back in the late 80s, early 90s called the Sir Douglas Quintet. And it's like Tex-Mex music, mostly country. Okay. And I don't know, he actually appreciated that. And it was like a little bit of a bond between me and him because it was like one of the few we agreed on. But he got me into some of the Grateful Dead stuff recently. I can appreciate it, though it's not my type of music entirely. Touch of Grey has always been one of my favorite songs, and not because it's Dead or not Grateful Dead. I love that song. I remember watching the video premiere in the 80s, 1988 or whenever that came out. That's a great song, to me. I don't think it's one of their favorite songs, as a band. I don't think that was ever one of their favorite songs, but to me, it was like their best song, So, but, getting into AC/DC, Cinderella, those bands did everything for me, man. I've met the lead singer of Cinderella, was backstage back in 2002.
Oh, I got to hear this story now. Elaborate on this for me. How'd you get back there in the first place?
So I took a little breather from my 80s hair metal music for a while because I was trying my best at the time to evolve. When I was roommates with John Galla, he got me into like Rammstein, a little bit of Primus, Metallica. It's kind of funny. I didn't mention Metallica yet. I never really got into them. And just by default, I always respected them and liked them. John's a huge Metallica fan. He got me into Metallica pretty heavy. Then we started going down Sepultura, some of these heavier bands that I never really listened to. And Fear Factory, those type of bands. And I started getting down like Megadeth. I started really listening to heavier music, Pantera. And then I started listening to some grunge music again. And then I remember Andrew WK came out, I think in like 2000. I actually liked it for some weird reason. And then Buck Cherry, I'm like, oh my God, they're like the second coming of AC/DC kind of. And they kind of fizzled out because I only had like 3 or 4 good songs. I tried my best to latch on to new music because I thought there was some progress being made, And then one day, a friend of mine, I was working in Pittsburgh. I used to work at Sam's Club in Robinson when I was living in Pittsburgh going to school. He's like, hey, I got tickets. I got 2 extra tickets if you want to go see Poison, Cinderella. It was Slaughter and Faster Pussycat. And I'm like, oh my God, it'd be great. It was called the Hollyweird Tour. Okay. It was at Burgestown at the Post-Gazette in Pittsburgh. Yeah. And this was July of 2002. I'm still living in Pittsburgh. I kind of like went maybe 6 months or so or a year without really listening to any hair metal music because I thought I burned myself out of it. I went to that concert. Faster Pussycat was okay, but they kind of turned into a weird emo band. They played their music, but it came out dressing up like like it was real BDSM. It was weird. Yeah. He came out, he kind of looked like Marilyn Manson a little bit, Okay. Lead singer's name's Tame Down. I don't know. He looked like Marilyn Manson when he came out. So I wasn't into that too much. And then Slaughter came on, Flight of the Angels. They played that song, a couple other songs. It was great. And then all of a sudden the stage lit up and then got dark and I saw smoke coming from the stage. Cinderella came on and we were probably 10 rows back, good seats. and they played Somebody Save Me, and it just, oh my God, it was the best concert experience I ever remembered up to that point. I was blown away all over again. It was like I forgot who Cinderella was, and they hit after hit, song after song. The lead singer Tom Kiefer playing the saxophone, played the piano, great frontman, kind of reminds me of Steven Tyler a little bit. I was so blown away, I don't even remember the Poison concert. Poison was a headliner, and I enjoy Poison. That was it for me. I remember getting in the car, and I looked at my friend. I said, I was with my friend Joe at the time. I said, hey, we're going to Walmart right now. I said, I'm going to go get some fresh CDs, because I had worn out my Cinderella CDs. I went and bought every CD that they had there, listened to Cinderella nonstop for like 3 months. I was just like, this is unreal, unbelievable. So August of 2002, my friend Joe Fox and I, my childhood friend been friends with him since '85. They did a quick stop in Erie, PA, the Erie Civic Center. We stayed at the Avalon Hotel. I brought our Jack Daniels to the room, had my boom box. We're listening to some Cinderella. And it was the same tour, okay? Poison, Slaughter, Faster Pussycat. And they made a quick pit stop in between Pittsburgh and Allentown, PA. And it was kind of a last minute call. We got tickets on Ticketmaster. It was standing room only. And we get there that day. I took off work for 2 days. We go there that day. It's on a Friday night, and I'm hammered. I'm in the room. We're just hammered. So I'm listening to the local rock radio they had at the time, and they said, hey, tomorrow at 11 o'clock, we're going to have frontman of Cinderella, Tom Kiefer, on our radio show. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. I got to listen to this. So the next morning we tune in, we go get a quick breakfast. He's on this radio show, and they're telling us the address of where this radio show is being broadcast. It's right down the street from our hotel. And I start drinking. I said, you know what, Joe? I said, I'm going to go meet Tom Kiefer. We're going to get backstage passes. He's like, how are we going to do that? I said, just trust me. We're going to do it. So we walk down there. We get there. The interview is just about over. I see him through the glass door. He's sitting down with the interviewer.
Yeah.
He walks out, gets in his limo. They drive him across the street to the Erie Civic Center. There's a crowd of people waiting for autographs. Okay. I walk through security. I walk straight towards him. He walks out of the limo. My buddy's like, dude, what are you doing? I said, just stop. The one security guard stops him. He's like, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to go meet Tom. I'm going to get an autograph. And he starts laughing. I just walk past him. I introduced myself. I mean, I'm lucky I didn't get shot. I walked right up to him. I'm kind of starstruck. I said, Tom, my name is Joe. I'm a lifelong Cinderella fan. I drove all the way from Youngstown, Ohio. He probably had no clue what that was. It was only like an hour and a half drive. I said, I'd love to get backstage passes. And he looked at me. He goes, what's your last name? I go, Bada. He goes, Bada. Okay. He goes, there'll be 2 backstage passes waiting for you. We'll call at 6 o'clock. I was like,
Oh, wow.
okay. I thought he forgot. We went back to the hotel and we partied all day. We just went drink after drink. It's concert time. The doors open at 6:30. I get there. I walk up to roll call booth. I had my tickets. Give them my ID. I said, I'm here to get 2 backstage passes. Sure enough, he even spelled my name right, Bada.
No shit.
They hand me an envelope. I got 2 backstage passes. I'm on cloud 9. I'm like, I'm going to meet one of my childhood heroes, man. And yeah, we went to the concert. I mean, I had tunnel vision, man. I just couldn't even really pay attention to the concert. When Cinderella came on, I'm excited. I skipped the Poison show. Went to the back. He's standing there with his future wife at the time. Her name's Savannah. And she's a local musician too, that he had met while he was on tour. And I remember smoking a cigarette. I got a bandana on. I got a Cinderella shirt on. I'm hammered. I walk up to him and he remembered me. He goes, Bada, right? I'm like, yeah. He remembered me. And I just was like, oh my God. I'm hanging out with Jeff LaBar, Eric Brittingham, Fred Curry, and Tom Kiefer. And I said, I can't believe this. And we're standing outside of his tour bus. So what do I say? Like an idiot. I go, you want a cigarette? I'm thinking nothing cooler than smoking a cigarette. He goes,
yeah.
No, man. He goes, I'm a singer. I don't smoke. I was like, oh my God. I'm sorry. He's like, you want to have anything to drink? He's like, no, I don't drink either. I got to keep my voice, prepared for the next show. And I'm
Wow.
like, oh my God, these guys don't party anymore, but I hung out with them for like an hour, man. And he was telling me about why they never released another studio album after Still Climbing from 1994. And he said, because Sony bought the rights to all their music, and they wanted to control the writing process. And he said, well, I like to write my own music, and we're still battling in the courts to get control of our music again. So they never came out with another studio album. And that's why Tom Kiefer tours as a solo band today. Wow. And he has rights to the Cinderella music, and he's come out with 2 studio albums since. So I've been to all those shows as well. But I've seen Cinderella live probably like 7 times,
That's a very interesting story. That takes some balls to just walk through security, walk right up to a limo and tell a guy, hey, I want backstage passes, man.
Oh yeah. And I didn't know what else to say. I figured just be bold about it. Tell him I'm a fan, I'm excited for the show, and whatever else I said, it was short, sweet, to the point. He remembered. And at that point, I had a lot of respect for him. Since then, in 2005, when they were still, a band, they haven't toured together or anything, I think, since 2000, maybe 2014, 2012. It's been a while since they've toured as a band. Jeff LaBar had alcohol issues. He's their lead guitarist. And in 2005, I saw them backstage again. I don't think he really remembered me. It was a lot of people and a lot of faces at that time. So I remember taking pictures with them. I have a picture of each band member from 2005 with me and my wife. My wife actually kind of likes Cinderella, and she enjoys just making me happy, I think, whether she really likes them or not, because I overplay this music too much, But I brought my mom for her birthday to surprise her, and she's a huge Cinderella fan too now. So we all got to meet the band, while they were still together. It was really cool.
Yeah, that's a nice memory to have there with your wife.
Yeah.
And being able to do all that. That's pretty cool. My wife's the same way. I've drug her to so many heavy metal shows and music that she's never even heard of. But she went for me. Like you said, she's doing it for me. She's not doing it for herself. She's doing it for me to make me happy. So,
yeah. And that's okay though, right? Because I did the same thing I went to a Bruno Mars concert with my wife. It was okay. I had a good time. It was okay.
I've gone to a James Taylor show with her a couple times, and actually has turned me into a fan of his music. And I've taken her to see Blondie because she's a huge Blondie fan. And, for her age, she still puts on a hell of a show, so.
I like Blondie
music too.
Yeah. I think Blondie's great.
No doubt. To flip the script on you here, because it's been rock, hair metal, a little bit of oldies and stuff. Where does Johnny Cash come into play with your spectrum of music?
Yeah. So like I said, I could talk about different bands for a long period of time. It's funny. We talked about AC/DC a little bit, and I really didn't, I think I talked more about Cinderella than AC/DC. And it's because I had that personal experience with Tom Kiefer, but getting into Johnny Cash, my dad is a huge Johnny Cash fan. And ever since I can remember, we listened to Johnny Cash. And we used to listen to it in my grandfather's house used to be right in front of the house that I grew up in on the West Side. And my dad had his main stereo in the living room. So that's where we listened to a lot of our music versus the bedroom I had, because it was a smaller setup. And my dad used to play Johnny Cash live from Folsom Prison for me quite a bit. And that meant a lot to my dad because, Johnny Cash spent some time there in prison. And he wanted to give back to those prisoners and actually gave them a free show. And that was one of his most popular recordings, So obviously Walk the Line and, there's 1,000 songs that he had, but my dad would always talk about how amazing Johnny Cash was as a songwriter. His voice was one of a kind, So along with listening to Johnny Cash, we listened to Waylon Jennings, a lot of Willie Nelson. My dad was a big Hank Jr. Sr. fan, actually, not Junior, Hank Williams Sr.
Yeah.
And then obviously we listened to some Hank Williams Jr. as well. But my dad would play Johnny Cash all the time, and that really stuck with me. And, I remember in 1987 or 88, Johnny Cash re-recorded in stereo all of his big hits. And that album was absolutely amazing. It's just called Johnny Cash Greatest Hits. And people don't realize, like, that's not all original recordings. It was all re-recorded with better sound. And if you can ever pick up that album, or anybody that's a Johnny Cash fan, you can hear Johnny Cash in all of his glory, because, it sounds a lot better recorded. But I fell in love with Johnny Cash, man. I went through that phase up until I was a senior in high school. I listened to Johnny Cash almost every day. It was one of my go-to CDs. And it's kind of a change of pace CD for me, or I'm sorry, change of pace music for me. I just thought he was amazing, man. No one could play guitar like Johnny Cash, But no, he was great. He was absolutely great. And I remember watching Walk the Line with Joaquin Phoenix, and I learned a lot more about Johnny Cash than I ever did before. But I earned a lot of respect for him. We used to watch PBS and all of his live concerts. But he was absolutely amazing, man. Johnny Cash is great. Ring of Fire, actually, one of my favorite songs of all time.
Hey, that's a good song to be one of your favorite songs of all time, man. Right up there
Yeah.
with Hell's Bells, right?
Hell's Bells is great, but now I look at my favorite AC/DC songs, probably Shook Me All Night Long.
Really?
I love that song. Yeah. It's one of the greatest rock anthems ever.
That could be arguably the most overplayed AC/DC song too, if you want to say that as well.
There is absolutely no doubt. There's no doubt, but that song just gets me going every time. That's a phenomenal song,
One
But
of
that
these
whole
days,
album's great, though. That's like a greatest hits album. When you listen to Back in Black, I mean, there's really no filler in that album whatsoever.
one of these days, I'm going to walk into the dealership with my Bluetooth speaker blasted, Shook Me All Night Long, just looking for you to see if you're going to start dancing.
I would love it. Absolutely. I would dance. I'm not a good dancer, but I would dance to that. I would dance to that for sure. So, getting into AC/DC even more, I was absolutely crazy with AC/DC. I had every one of their albums, every one of their cassettes, every one of their CDs. And, the list goes on with them. I mean, Highway to Hell is a great album. Bon Scott's last album with them is phenomenal. For Those About to Rock is absolutely phenomenal. That's their second album. That's actually their first hit single, technically, was For Those About to Rock. So, and not many people know that, but that album was well received, and it actually at the time sold more albums than Back in Black. But since we know Back in Black's the #1 selling hard rock album of all time, so they did something right there. And then along the way, a couple lineup changes, but their sound never really changed, until Razor's Edge. Razor's Edge was a little edgier album, a little heavier, but you had Chris Slade on drums, who played for, I believe, The Firm. He's the bald guy, if no one remembers, on the Thunderstruck video. And he also played on their live album, from Donington, 1991. And they had a heavier sound. They played the songs faster. Brian Johnson tries to play a lot of the Bon Scott songs, which he does a good job on a lot of them. I think he chose the right ones to do. But if you listen to that live album, the quality of the recording, the fidelity, the songs just come alive, especially the Bon Scott songs that he does, and that was a different time for AC/DC. That's when I consider them kind of their edgiest and a little heavier era, but no doubt that Razor's Edge was their heaviest album, if you want to call AC/DC heavy by any means, but they're really a hard rock band,
Oh yeah. Money Talks, Thunderstruck was probably my favorite.
Are You Ready?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Such a great album.
It's just good stuff,
Since you brought up AC/DC again, I want to play some music trivia with AC/DC.
I'd love to.
All right. See if I can stump you here, Joe.
You might. I hope not.
Some of these might be, cupcake questions for you because, I don't know how hard or easy they are, but if you're a avid fan of the band, you might know some of this stuff. So, you mentioned the Back in Black album. Can you tell me what year that album was released?
1980.
Very good. We're 1 for 1 already. How about the album Highway to Hell? Do you know what year that was released?
1979.
2 for 2. You're doing better than Tug did on his Grateful Dead quiz questions.
This is going to get hard here because it's tricky. It really is, and I didn't prepare for this interview as far as like doing any research. I just worked all week, went home, did my thing, and we'll see.
That's what it's all about, though, right?
That's right.
All right, here's one for you. Who was the inventor of the famous duck walk that Angus Young performs on stage?
That would be Chuck Berry.
Yes, it is.
And that's one of Angus Young's biggest influences.
Yeah, you mentioned him earlier in the interview and stuff like that. Wow, that's pretty good. Okay. Big Gun was a song written for the movie Last Action Hero. Do you know who appeared in that music video? What actor?
Oh, well, the one and only Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, and even did the duck walk with him on stage in that video. I think that was like 93, right? Something like that.
It doesn't give me a year on there, unfortunately.
Okay, I remember that because that was just a one-off single. It came out as a single. But of course, I'm a huge Arnold Schwarzenegger fan because I love the Terminator as well. But I love all of his movies. But the fact that he was in that video and the fact that that song was great, by the way. I love that song. That was good.
All right, let's see if you can get a musical lyric here. Speaking of the Razor's Edge album from the 1990s, what does Brian Johnson want for Christmas?
Mistress.
Very good, man. I'm impressed so far. No, like I said, I don't know how hard these questions are for the average person. I mean, I don't know all of them, but
But that's a little deeper track. Like, they don't have deep tracks by any means, but that's definitely a deeper track. If you don't listen to that album in its entirety, you probably wouldn't know that,
Yes. Can you tell me who formed the band AC/DC?
Oh, okay. So Malcolm Young is actually Malcolm Young and Angus Young are the founders of AC/DC.
Yes, they are. Very good. See if I can try to throw you a curveball here. In 2016, Brian Johnson stopped touring. And can you tell me who filled in for him on that tour?
Yes, because I actually went to that show twice that year. I saw them during that tour, the Rocker Bus Tour. I saw them in Detroit and I saw them in Cleveland. Okay, so September, I believe it was 16, right? Brian Johnson, it was one of his last shows, actually. So he had some hearing loss.
Correct.
Had to stop touring, and the lead singer of one of my favorite bands, Axl Rose, offered his duties, and he toured with them. So I actually went to that show later that year, so I got to see AC/DC with Axl Rose, which was really cool, and that meant a lot to me. It was really
awesome, man. You got a clean sweep. I think you're my first guest on a podcast that's got all the answers right. Good job, Joe.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Thank you.
Before we jump off here in a little bit, I want to give you the opportunity to make any business plugs that you might want to do at this time. Because I know we talked a little bit before we jumped on the podcast. So is there anything you'd like to promote or make a plug for? Have at it, man.
Absolutely. So, I work at Subaru, obviously, and this company, as a company and as a dealership, we do a lot for the community. So every year we have the Show the Love event. I think it runs from November 19th to January 2nd. And we donate at least up to $250,000 on behalf of 4 local charities. So we do a lot with Akron Children's Hospital, ASPCA, Animal Charity, Meals on Wheels, which that's who we personally donate our time to as salesmen and managers at the dealership. And it just goes to a great cause. In lieu of rebates, we're giving back to the community, which I think is phenomenal. So when you purchase a Subaru, not only are you getting a great vehicle, you're getting the opportunity to give back to the community. So, Subaru is always about love. You're going to hear the love promise. If you ever go to our website, if you know anybody that has a Subaru, they're a very green company. So on top of doing for the community, which is really just number one, giving exceptional customer service, meeting the needs of all of our customers with newer pre-owned vehicles. offering great rates, great deals. Any time of the year is a good time to buy a Subaru. And just know that the vehicles where they're produced, where we manufacture our vehicles, are landfill-free facilities. So, for instance, the American-made Subarus, the Outback, which is our midsize SUV, the Impreza, which is our compact car, the Legacy, which is our midsize car, the Ascent, which is our 7 and 8 passenger vehicle. Those vehicles are actually manufactured, and they use U.S. steel for those facilities as well. Those facilities are 99% landfill free, and the land surrounding that facility and the facility in Japan, which manufactures the Forester, the WX, and the STI, the BRZ, which is our only vehicle that's not all-wheel drive. That's also a landfill-free facility, and the land surrounding it are considered national wildlife preserves. So we do very good things for the community, and where they produce the cars, they do very good things to their ability. It's a great car. It's reliable. It means a lot for a lot of people to own a Subaru versus other brands, and we love to promote that. So we absolutely love where we work. Boardman Subaru, the owner, Rob Fellman, does a lot for the community himself, and as a whole, we advertise, get a lot of people in here, and it's just caught on like wildfire. We've switched people from other loyal brands as well. So, but Subaru, I would say, is the most loyal brand in America. So I'd love for everybody to come out and at least check us out for your next vehicle.
Now, you are, if I'm mistaken, aren't you the used car manager at the
Yes.
Subaru there?
Yes,
So,
I'm one of two actually. Myself and Steve Engster.
okay.
We are in sales as well, but we are also the used car managers. Yes, so I'm one of the used car managers at the dealership.
So I might be coming to visit you here in about a year, actually about 2 years, because I'm going to have a soon to be 16-year-old here in 2 years that's going to need a used car. And I think I might have to come give you a visit to get a good deal on something, because
Absolutely, I would absolutely love that,
I'm
and
not
we'll
going to be
give you a
buying
great deal, of course, Ron. You know that you won't get a better deal in town.
I'm not going to be buying a brand new vehicle for my son at 16. That's for sure. He's going to get a used car like all of us did.
Well, I like to use the term, these cars are pre-owned, but we fully service them. They're fully looked over. We can certify most of our vehicles and give you a great warranty, a great rate as well, if you're looking for financing. If not, you know, whether you're paying cash or whether you're financing, you can get the best deal here.
Awesome.
And we have the greatest selection too. So obviously when that time comes, we'll have something for you. And if I don't have anything here, we'll find you something, but there's going to be no need for that. We're going to have enough cars here for you to choose from.
Absolutely. 2 years from now, I got plenty of time to wait. I'm not going to rush things. Trust me, because
Yeah.
just turned 14 and it's just taking it 1 year at a time. But Joe Bada, I appreciate your time tonight. This has been a lot of fun because I can relate to a lot of the music because we're the same age, have a lot of musical taste and things like that. I do appreciate you jumping on. Hope you had fun tonight because I know I did.
I did too. And I feel like I went off track a million times because there's so much more to talk about. I could probably do 10 more podcasts with you.
Well, like I'm going to say to you, like I say to everybody else, there's always another opportunity that I can get you back on here. Because, like you said, there's concerts that we didn't even talk about that you went to some of these concerts of your favorite
Yeah.
bands and artists and stuff. There's actually a couple of musicians that we didn't hit on. So, if you want to come back, I'll have you back, man. How's that sound?
I appreciate it, Ron. Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
All right, guys. This is Ron Glissa signing off for the Music Spectrum podcast. Make sure you guys check out my podcast. It's all over Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast. So check it out. Also check out my Facebook page. It's under the Music Spectrum podcast on Facebook. If you need a new car, if you need a pre-owned car, go check out Joe. Go check out my brother-in-law, Tug at Boardman Subaru. Great company, great guys out there. Once again, Joe, thanks for coming on my show tonight. You guys have a wonderful night, and we will see you guys very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Cool, man. So that was good, man.
Oh, I thought I did terrible because I was all over the place, but
well, the thing is I don't have we have to follow this, and this. It's just whatever.
Yeah, it was great though. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I just felt like I had so much to say about other things, and I hope I didn't go off track, but that was a lot of fun, man. That was great.
Yeah, no, absolutely, it's great. And I don't care that you go off topic because this is about you. I'm interviewing you, and
Yeah.
it's about you and what you like and different things like that. But you know, I wouldn't mind having you on again because, like, I know you saw some of these other people in concert. We didn't talk about Ozzy. We didn't talk about Led Zeppelin. So um, we could definitely try to jump on sometime in the near future and do something like this again.
Love to, man. And then if you ever want to stop over sometime, you're more than welcome. You're a big music fan. And by the way, I love Metallica. Shame on me for not talking more about Metallica. I saw them last year. It was
Yeah,
phenomenal. I
I
only
know.
went to one show, and it was just unreal. You got to come over and bring your favorite music over, man. I got a record player. I got a cassette player. I got CDs. Anything you want to come over and listen to. I got a high res audio player. I've got some tannoy speakers, a subwoofer, got a 600-watt amp. Come over anytime you want, and we can have a beer or two and listen to
Absolutely,
some music, man.
absolutely. Um, I will get this edited between tomorrow and Saturday at some point. Jennifer
Okay.
has free first thing in the morning, so I'm not going to do this tonight. And then I will put it on Facebook. I'll make sure I tag you in it. And then from there, you can share it and tag it. Like if you want to tag, I wrote down a couple names, obviously Tug, uh, John Gala. You mentioned Joe Fox. If any of your family, your mom, dad, whatever, on Facebook, tag them in it since you're mentioning them in the podcast, so they could listen to it. If you want to tag Rob Feldman, if he's on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and that way these people can listen to you and then they can, hear that you're mentioning them in the podcast. And it's just fun. It's like being on the radio. You hear your name on the radio. Hey, that's me.
Yeah, it's really cool. So you thought it was decent? I didn't go off track too much. I don't need a
No,
redo or anything.
like I said, I don't have like a set railroad track that we got to stay on here. If we go off topic, it doesn't matter to me. My big thing is just trying to hit as many of these artists that I can. And if you elaborate, on ACDC and Cinderella like you did, that's absolutely fine because those are your one or two that you put on here. That's who you want to talk about the most. And you did. But you
Yeah.
mentioned so many other ones in there throughout there. Like I said, you can come back on and just, hey, we didn't talk about this, we didn't talk about that, and we didn't talk about concerts and, whatever. So
Yeah. Okay. That
cool.
was great, man. That was fun. Dude, you did this up too. You really impressed me with that backdrop. I'm loving it. The Highway to Hell backdrop. That is fantastic.
Well,
I
I
love
will
it.
let you know firsthand. I'll send you a text and I'll let you know when it comes out. And then, however you listen to the podcast, I usually will put all the links on there on my Facebook or on the Music Spectrum Facebook page. I'll put all the links so you can click on whatever link you want to listen to it. And then we'll go from there, man.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, man.
Yep. Enjoy your half-hour ride home listening to music.
I will.
All right, Joe. We'll catch up soon, man. Appreciate it. Thank
All right.
you.
Yep.
All
Take
right.
care.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.